There can be no society without a shared memory of its history, where it has been, what are its core values and aspirations, who have been its architects. The Eminent Caribbean Jurists Awards was conceptualized in 2019 to recognize and celebrate those outstanding jurists who, by dint of their brilliance, hard work, and determination, have made a consequential contribution to Caribbean society. The 2021 installation of these awards pays homage to pioneering Caribbean women jurists who have built and are building the Caribbean society through their contributions to legal activism, adjudication, corporate governance, education, politics, and public service. These are women who have shattered glass ceilings and who have blazed an inspirational trail for the younger generation and indeed for all of us to follow.
The peaceful settlement of disputes between individuals and the state is at the core of civilized society. We honor those women who have assumed leadership positions in our judiciaries. They have ensured the governance of our societies according to the rule of law.
Dame Anita Allen. Despite the adversity of her early life, Dame Anita Allen has had a life of distinction, marked by duty and responsibility, upheld by love of country. Carl Bethel, Attorney General of the Bahamas, describes her in this way. Dame Anita's ascendancy to the position of President of the Court was undergirded by a fine legacy of service within the legal profession, both at the public and private bar, and sharpened during more than 14 years as a judge of the Supreme Court. This was illustrated in her approach to many sensitive and tough judicial issues, and several of her rulings became landmark cases or contributed significantly to the development of local jurisprudence. The legacy of Dame Anita Allen will be that of a career in law nobly spent, and of a life nobly lived, of a judge who had the rare fortune of winning the admiration of legal practitioners, fellow judges, and the public who she served with such integrity. Many judges attract commendation from one or more of these constituencies. Very few are respected by all. Chief Justice Dame Janice Pereira. The Eastern Caribbean joins in congratulating Dame Janice Pereira on her many achievements, and in particular her contribution to the justice system in the region. This honoree has her roots in the village of North Sound in the British Virgin Islands, where as a child in primary school, law piqued her interest. An honors graduate of the University of the West Indies, Dame Janice started her legal career in the public sector in 1981. By 2003, she chose to leave her successful law firm to serve on the bench of the Eastern Caribbean Court. On October 24, 2012, she made history as the first female Chief Justice of the Eastern Caribbean, a position she still holds today.
One of the things that stand out in my mind, which did not come as a surprise, is the tremendous amount of pride that they have for Janice. It is palpable. And it is not just her family. It's the entire North Sound. North Sound is a small town, 2,000 people. And she was brought up by the people of North Sound. They are so proud of her. The people of Virgin Gorda, where North Sound is, are proud of her. The entire BVI is extremely proud of Dame Janice. I am very proud of Dame Janice.
It was, of course, a larger number of persons, and just being used to university life in the truest sense, in the social sense, mixing with other persons from the Caribbean, from the Brides, Trinidad, Bahamas, Jamaica, everywhere. And so it was really a great mixing experience. I call those times when students simply entered from across the region the best of the times of integration of the Caribbean region.
She is one of the first 2 female Virgin Islanders to be called to the bar in the BVI. She is the first female Virgin Islander to be appointed as a judge, the first female Virgin Islander to be appointed as a Justice of Appeal, and most significantly, the first female to be appointed Chief Justice of the Eastern Caribbean Supreme Court. That is one beautiful career path. When she started out, she wore multiple hats: Registrar of the High Court, Registrar of Companies, Admiralty Marshal, and various others. The one that stands out for me is her role as Registrar of Companies. It is no secret that the BVI is an offshore jurisdiction. It started shortly after Dame Janice came back from law school and was practicing as a lawyer. And the vehicle through which the BVI developed was companies, international business companies. And she was the registrar. She had to implement all of these new systems, put them in place, and make them work, and make the registry work in a completely different way from it worked in the previous 10, 15, 20 years.
As a registrar, first when I started there, it was the first time that I think they were having a person as registrar who was legally trained. And sometimes I think, looking back, that this is sometimes what is missing, that you need that legal background, but a lot of it in terms of managing and the administrative aspects, I learned a great deal from the former registrar who, the fact that I came in, simply guided me in all of the administrative functions and basically the runnings and operations, the financial aspects. And so I was able now to blend and to gain that experience, which I thought was simply a grounding that stood me in good stead at where I am now, for example, operating both judicially and administratively.
She did all that. And I say, as it's often said, the rest is history. The BVI developed, it had that solid foundation. And it developed, the BVI is known for top-class service in the offshore industry. But that's where that's some of where you can see the beginnings of service and a service-oriented industry. That stands out for me in terms of her service, her public service.
When I left the registry, this was the registrar's office, at the time I felt it was time, as it were, to sort of spread my wings out into private practice. I thought this would be a wonderful place to start and to learn litigation strategies. And Dr. Archibald is really one of the greatest teachers I know. You never saw him angry with the court. His view was, if there is a point and you feel that they got it wrong, there's an appellate court, and that is where you take it. So no one would see him angry or agitated. And these are experiences, I think, that one cannot learn from the law books.
As I said, she may be small, but she was a formidable opponent. And she distinguished herself in private practice. We worked together in a firm for some time, and I thoroughly enjoyed working with her. And eventually she established her own firm with Mr. Justice Ferrara. And that firm carries on. But eventually the call of the bench got to her. and she resigned from private practice and went off to be a judge.
Interestingly, it was the same Dr. Archibald, and it was on one occasion we were dealing with a matter. I was assisting him in drafting and preparing arguments for the case. And one day we are coming out of court. As he came out, he said to me, I think one day you will become a judge. And I said, why would you think that? And he said, I think because you think analytically. And I said, you think that? And he says, oh yes, I think you will do very well as a judge. But I paid it no mind. These were years before, and I thought to myself, well, very good compliment, but at that time I had absolutely no thoughts about going on the bench. Some years later, here I am. I spent basically about 5.5 years on the High Court bench, and then I remembered I was approached and asked, whether you ever thought of, the Court of Appeal, and I thought, oh, well, I think I could try that too. I thoroughly enjoyed it. In fact, I enjoyed it more than the High Court bench, because this idea of simply dealing with legal issues and approaching a case, not necessarily taking evidence and that sort of thing, I found it that much more challenging, that much more exciting.
Her contribution on the bench, sometimes I look and I think, how does she do it? And one of her contributions, I think, is to show what hard work can achieve. Because she carries her weight as a judge of the Court of Appeal, as with all the other judges. And she has done an excellent job of managing those two jobs, each of which I think should be done by one person. It's very demanding to have a Chief Justice who sits full-time as a Court of Appeal judge and also has to run the court system. And it goes all the way down, Court of Appeal, High Court, Magistrates Court. It is a tremendous responsibility.
Well, on the legal side, one of the things that struck me coming onto the bench was that because you are in a regional court, it's a regional court of appeal, you're fielding appeals from 9, sometimes I call it 10, because there is, of course, the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis, and they have, of course, their own resident judge there as well. So you're basically fielding appeals from all of these 9 states and territories, and you had to sort of develop a system, a pattern, how you're going to really channel and handle all of this work that is really sort of coming at you. I looked at ways that you could increase the complement of judges in the Court of Appeal, and basically how you should structure sittings, structure other types of applications that would be coming before the court, how we will handle it and that sort of thing. Just keeping current, keeping pace. And we're sort of still growing that side because the volume is continuing to grow. When I look back, I think to myself that perhaps at the time when I was making the decision and even being a bit reticent about it, that it was perhaps one of the best ones. Just the opportunity to serve the wider region. That to me is sort of the greatest honor that one can have.
Off the bench, I think the achievement which stands out in my eyes, and I think in the eyes of most people in the Eastern Caribbean, is the implementation of the e-litigation portal. Before the portal was set up, we had a system, it's called GEMS. It's a software-based system. It's not internet-based. So it was a good system when it was implemented because it helped a lot. But Chief Justice saw that we could achieve more. She set on the task of getting an internet-based system. In 2017, early 2017, the e-litigation portal was established, and you now had a system where you could file documents electronically and you could access them from anywhere in the world, which of itself speaks volumes. But the real achievement or the real benefit came with COVID. What gave our Chief Justice the foresight to set up this system ending in 2017? I think it's just her drive, but the benefits have been countless. And she has received lavish praises from lawyers, litigants, governments. It's been good. And it, I think, is her single most important achievement off the bench. So she has made her contribution as a Chief Justice on and off the bench. And in all of this, she has done a wonderful job. I would say that through her efforts, the Eastern Caribbean Supreme Court has been taken into the 21st century.
Justice Elizabeth Bourne Hollins, a gifted and visionary Caribbean woman, Elizabeth Bourne Hollins was born in 1918 in St. Lucia to Barbadian parents. The family returned to Barbados when she was 11 years old, and she left for London in 1938 to complete her secondary education, moving on to study law at Middle Temple in 1939 at the start of the Second World War. Elizabeth was the only female student from the West Indies and the only Barbadian at Middle Temple. She had to overcome many obstacles on her path, but succeeded in being called to the bar in London in 1946. In 1947, she was the first woman to be admitted to practice law in Barbados. Thus began her career of many firsts, which includes being appointed Trinidad and Tobago's first woman judge in 1972.
It was such a privilege and a pleasure to delve into the story and the life that is Justice Marie Bourne Hollins. It was an interesting life because, first of all, in 1939, she went to England to study law and stayed there during all those years of the war, Second World War. She was at Middle Temple. Middle Temple was bombed during the war. And despite all of that, I mean, the average person would run back to Barbados. She stayed there. She completed her law studies.
But I have a crystal clear vision of her in the early years. And I wasn't around then. But I have a vision of that milieu. And I've seen her during the years socially, obviously, and so. But then in the latter years, I've seen her with Sir Roy, and that to me, that's just extraordinary.
And in 1946, the year after the war was ended, she was called to the bar and returned in 1947 to Barbados. I think that strengthened her and caused her to be someone who could face many difficulties and many challenges. In addition, when she got back to Barbados, she was the first woman to be called to the bar in Barbados. And she then accomplished so much. She did legal drafting in the office of the Attorney General. She went to court. She became a magistrate and was known for her fearlessness. She was known as Betty Bourne.
When she would have been called to the bar in 1947 or thereabouts, she would then have gone straight into the courts here and acted as a defense counsel in the High Court and in the Magistrates' Court. And what is interesting is that she would be a woman from a privileged background. And the people that she would have been representing would have been, I don't want to make it sound like murderers and rapists, but there would have been people who would have been a little of that as well, but also on breaking and entering charges and that sort of thing. These would be, without being unkind, low-life criminals. So I can imagine some of these people coming into her office and, giving their witness statement, their story, and she would have been listening and trying to make the best defense out of it. It's pretty remarkable for a woman at that time, and a woman of some privilege, to be happily in such a situation, making these types of representations, these types of interviews, and by and large giving hope to such persons. And in some cases, she would also have met individuals who were just unfortunate to be where they were placed and to have done what they allegedly were supposed to have done. But at that time, in the Attorney General's chambers, there would be a lot of court representation of the chambers, which she would have gone to the courts to represent the AG's chambers. And in the book, and I knew this even without reading the book, because this one is pretty important. This is something that we all would know. At that time, when you think of it, the lawyers on the other side would have been Grantley Adams, later Sir Grantley Adams, Hugh Springer, later Sir Hugh Springer, Theodore Branker, later Sir Theodore Branker, Dighton Ward, later Sir Dighton Ward, and E.R.L. Ward, as he was so often called, always by the initials, later also knighted. Now, when you think of it, these were not just men who were knighted. These were leaders. These were the lawyers of the day. But what is interesting is that I have a vision of her with these persons appearing on the other side, because they would all have been, she would have been at that time prosecuting, they would be defending. But these are all, and I'm fortunate to have known many of them as older persons to myself, but persons that I myself have benefited a lot from in terms of watching their style, in terms of interacting with them. But these persons would all have had the quintessence of gentility. It would be different to the type of interaction she would have been having in 1947 as defense counsel, representing, quote unquote, the riffraff, with whom she would have bonded. And now she would have been working, on the other side of, the finest gentlemen that you could find and anywhere. She was therefore so well equipped to serve in the disciplinary committee of the bar in later years, the same bar, because she understood the law, she understood the nuances of the law, she understood the players, both in the law and outside of the law.
Justice Bourne was appointed the first woman judge of Trinidad and Tobago and of the Commonwealth Caribbean in 1972. It was a time of much rejoicing in the lives of many women and in the views of many women. I shared in the biography that there was a glamorous dinner held for her at the Hilton, and she was honored by so many women, including former judge, retired Judge Monica Barnes. Our special artists were there. And I can tell you, I was a young girl then, living in Woodbrook. And the news that a woman had become a judge was something that was in the home. my mother, my aunt, they were excited and they were saying, imagine this, a woman can become a judge. And I have never forgotten that. At that time, I just finished my A-levels, I was thinking of doing law, and I set about to do law.
I cannot forget that, so to speak, it wasn't necessarily, it might have been the last time that I really encountered her and spent time with her. And I was there with Sir Roy Marshall, whom she had recently married. And it was such a lovely experience because these were two older people who had given so much service to Barbados and to the world, as it were. And they had found love and marriage, and they were happy together. You know, I see her there as someone who is truly an individual and truly a thinking person, and someone who thinks beyond their gender. And that's the important aspect, in my view, of Betty Bourne Hollins. She always thought beyond her gender. A distinguished woman, not just as a first, yes, all of those things. But she was also more than that. She was beyond being the first. She was beyond. And very special person. And I hope that this text, this book, which is honoring her and so many other women, I hope that it's a huge success.